If everyone
Recording in progress.
their mics off while we're lecturing, that'll help. So if you can mute yourself, I think
I
that
think
should
that
help
should
with
be everybody.
echo. Is that from your phone maybe?
You should be good now.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to do this in a little bit different format. What I'm going to first say before we get started is that with the kids, I did a lot of interactive, we had a lot of discussion during the lecture, but for tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the material and then I'll leave time for any questions that anyone that's on this call on our Zoom that they want to ask. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if there's something specific you'd like to know, I'll make sure that there's room in this lecture to answer anything that may come up as you're listening. So again, my name is Cheryl Blink. I am an athletic trainer. I'm also a strength and conditioning specialist, and I have a degree in clinical nutrition. And I've been doing this for about 30 plus years. I've known Jen Ungvery for quite a few years. And Jen and I have actually been working together in designing different nutrition plans and helping people to know how to fuel their athletes, as well as teaching parents how to prepare meals for their athletes and how to make it so that it's available for the kids when they are going away or perhaps traveling, or maybe they just need food that they have to take with them to school. So this PowerPoint should be giving you a little bit more of an indication of how can you support your athletes and understanding what you should be feeding them, right? So just to kind of, let's see if we can, there we go. So what we're gonna start with is understanding food, all right? One of the ways that you as a parent have to know how to feed your athlete is knowing what it is that they need to do whatever sport it is that they have. Your food is your fuel. And when we look at what your body is trying to create, the energy that you hear that we call it is called ATP, but we're getting all that from the breakdown of the foods we're eating, which are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Those are your macronutrients that we're talking about. But we don't use all three of those things for fuel. And there are things that we want to eat right before competition. And there's things that we don't necessarily want to eat before competition because we'll get an upset stomach. All these different foods, they get digested at a different rate. So where something that you might eat might sound like a good idea, but then you go to play, may give you an upset stomach, it probably has more to do with what type of macronutrient it is, whether it's a carbohydrate, whether it's a fat, or whether it's a protein, okay? But when we look at, for an athlete, I want to give them the food that's gonna be most easy to use, whether they are a sprinter or whether they are my endurance athlete, my cross-country runner, my long-distance swimmer. And we really always tend to seem to focus on carbohydrates because that's really going to be where my energy is primarily going to come from. So let's talk a little bit about what is that. Goodness, it's going to be one of those days. Here we go. So carbohydrates are basically the foods that we can use both, as I say, anaerobically when I have a higher intensity type of sport, or it's going to be a longer distance. So it's going to be your aerobic activity. One is using oxygen, one is not using oxygen. But carbohydrates can be used regardless, which is why we really focus on them. Now, everybody always asks me, well, what about fat? When we talk about aerobic, we're burning more fat. Well, that's true, but not really true. And why I say that is that when we look at intensity of an exercise, if it's going to be a higher intensity, I may not be able to give my body the amount of oxygen it needs. And I may have to get energy in an anaerobic way. Carbohydrates can be used for that. Or if I am doing more of a steady state, more longer duration activity, then that's going to be more of my aerobic using oxygen. And yes, I can use fat, but I'm still going to need carbohydrates. Now, keep in mind, when I think about what my body has stored in it, you have a very limited amount of carbohydrates in your body. You've got two places where you store it, and that's it. You have a exorbitantly larger amount of body fat stored on your body than you do carbohydrates. However, you don't really use those fats unless you have enough carbohydrates in your system. So it's a little foreshadowing, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But when I am focused on making sure that my athlete has enough energy for the sport they want, I'm going to be first looking at, are they getting enough carbohydrates? So you have to understand how your body uses fuel. We break down all the, when we have any kind of a carbohydrate, those break down to sugar. Those break down to glucose. When we break down protein, that breaks down to amino acids. And fats break down to fatty acids. But understand that sugar is our main source of fuel. That is going to be what we're going to use for energy primarily. We don't really use protein for fuel, although protein is going to be used in other things, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more down the road. But when I talk about what I'm going to use for energy, I really am looking at carbs because those are the things that get broken down the quickest and absorbed and used the fastest. Now, that brings me to my next point. It takes our body a really long time to break down protein and fat. So when people ask me, what should I be feeding my athlete? It's really going to determine how much time do I have to break down that food so that it's no longer in my stomach when I go on the field and I start running around. And you have to understand that your body's going to prioritize what it needs the most. When you're exercising, your body needs to use its blood flow to get oxygen and energy to the muscles that are exercising. And it's going to deprioritize anything else that's going on in your body at the time you're exercising. That includes digestion. So if I eat something that takes 3 hours to digest and it's only been an hour since I ate it, it's still in my stomach or partially in my intestine and it's not finished getting digested, but your body's like, I really don't have time for this. I have to get oxygen to my muscles. We're going to put this on hold for now, and I'll come back to that later. That's what happens when athletes eat protein too close to their competition. That's what happens when my athletes eat too much fat too close to their competition. Carbohydrates are easy to break down. Carbohydrates can be broken down in an hour or even less. And it all depends on the kind of carbohydrates that we're talking about. So let's talk a little bit more about that. When we come to looking at, actually, we're going to come back to a second. Let's come back to this slide because this actually does depict a lot of what I'm talking about. When we're looking at carbohydrates, we want to think about things like our fruits, our vegetables, pasta, crackers. We can even consider some of the energy drinks like Gatorade or vitamin water that has sugar in it. That all falls in the category of carbohydrates. But if I'm looking at like chicken parm sandwich, or even if I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with too much peanut butter in it, that protein is going to take a really long time to digest, and it's going to give your athlete an upset stomach. I want them, if they're going to have the protein, I want to make sure they have enough time to digest it. And I want to make sure that it's not still in their gut by the time I go to exercise. So I'm going to focus on my carbs and making sure that as I get closer and closer to the time to eat, I'm going to really try to primarily keep them from eating too much protein, eat more carbohydrates, because that's what's going to turn to blood sugar and that's what's going to give me my energy. So now let's talk about, everybody wants to know what energy is happening when, and that was kind of what I was getting at with aerobic versus anaerobic exercise. If you look at the different timing, the different lengths of exercise lasting, you have different types of energy depending on how long the event that your athlete is doing lasts. So if you have an athlete who's a sprinter, that's going to be the 100-yard dash, and it's going to last literally seconds. You have energy that's in your muscle that is right there to be used. And we call it ATP. We also call it creatine phosphate. We will use that as our primary source of energy and some carbs, but that's it. Once we start to go to exercise that lasts anywhere from 15 seconds to 2 minutes or more, now we're starting to develop we're starting to create lactic acid. We're starting to have a higher intensity of exercise. It's lasting very short period, but it's very, very intense. And I'm going to need carbs for that. That is called anaerobic. Anything longer than that, I'm going to be able to use other forms of fuel, such as fats, but it's going to be over a longer duration of time, and it's going to take a little bit longer to ramp up the intensity on that. And you can see this by this chart. If you look at the chart, you're going to notice that those first few seconds, whatever energy is in the muscle gets used, but then it's gone. It literally is expired by 15 seconds. Then you start to use what other fuels that you have, specifically carbohydrates. You start to transfer to using that. But we're using all the different pathways all at the same time, but depending on the length of the activity, I will start to use different fuels as I continue to exercise. So that's why we have to think about what we're eating, when we're eating, and what do we need to replenish. All right, so now we get to introduce carbohydrates. Everything on this slide is carbohydrates. I do not look at food as bad or good, healthy, not healthy. I look at what do I need to eat, when I need to eat it, and will this be the best form for me to eat it at that time? So let me explain this a little bit. When we look at carbohydrates, that means fruits, vegetables, that means cookies, that means candy, that means bread, that means pasta, that means grains. That's a huge array of foods that all fall under one category. But it does get broken up into two, which is simple and complex. The simple carbohydrates are just very simple. In other words, they have 1 or 2 molecules of sugar. That means that my body can literally absorb it the minute that I ingest it. If I need instant energy, I want it to be a simple carb. Simple carb can be candy, can also be a Gatorade. It's easy to digest, it's easy to absorb. Complex carbohydrates, now I'm looking at fruits, I'm looking at vegetables, I'm looking at whole grains. Why they're complex is because they have longer chains. There are many more sugars that are connected by bonds. That's going to take me a little bit longer to digest. They also have something called fiber in them, which is great for digestion. It's great for controlling blood sugar. It's great for making the sugar last a little bit longer. As a parent, you guys all know what I'm talking about. If you give your child a piece of candy at 8 o'clock at night, they are going to spin. And that is because simple sugars get absorbed really fast and they shoot your blood sugar up really quickly, and then you crash because your body immediately starts to either burn it or store it because it doesn't like high blood sugar. When I want the blood sugar to last a little bit longer, I'm going to go with a more complex version of what I'm looking to eat. So it's not that there is a bad carbohydrate. It's if I know that my athlete is going to need energy an hour from now, I don't want them to eat the simple sugar right now, because what's going to happen is they're going to eat it, it's going to go into their bloodstream, and then they're going to crash. And they're going to crash before they've even started the race. I might have them have slices of fruit an hour before so that it kind of stays a little bit longer. And then maybe 15 minutes before the race, then I'll give them the piece of candy, or I'll have them have a swig of Gatorade or whatever electrolyte drink that they want to have that has sugar in it to give them that extra boost. So it's all a matter of timing when you eat the types of foods. So again, I don't look at bad or good. I look at, is this the appropriate time to have this, or should I restructure when I'm timing eating these things? So looking at this slide, I'm going to just kind of move this over here if you can see it. Okay. Oop, nope. Come back. There we go. So we look at the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates. I'm looking at simple being pasta, bread, baked goods, candy, again, as your Gatorades. But we look at the complex, we're looking at our fruits, we're looking at our vegetables, we're looking at our whole grains, and they contain fiber. So we have to think about, I want to maybe pick from the right column if I have an hour to digest it, or if it's 15 minutes before, I'll pick from the left column. But notice that carbohydrates, in and of themselves, they're getting digested within an hour of being ingested, as opposed to protein that is taking anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to digest, as does fat. And it's going to cause a lot of GI problems for my athlete if they eat that within an hour of working out. If they're going to eat the other things, we have to think twice about when we're eating them. All right, protein. Well, I've just basically trashed protein because I just told you we don't get energy from them. But protein has a very important role, okay? Protein breaks down to something called amino acids. They are essential in your body to replenishing everything from your blood cells to your muscle to your skin to your neurotransmitters. You need your protein for what we call your scaffolding. If I'm going to ask you to build a house, the protein is the wood, the girders, the roof, the tile. That's your protein. Your protein's used for all the structural things that are in your body, as well as replenishing and replacing what we break down. That's how we rebuild. If you don't eat enough protein, then all that exercising that your athletes are doing, they're never getting to recover because their body uses protein to recover from what they do during exercise. Now, why is it so important that you know the difference between animal and plant? There is nothing wrong if you are vegetarian versus you eat animal protein. However, if you are predominantly eating plant-based protein, the big problem, and we have to be careful, is that we're getting adequate amounts of what we call essential amino acids. The amino acids that our body, human beings, cannot make ourselves. We have to get it from the foods we eat. So if you are plant-based, I highly recommend that you work with a nutritionist or that you're keeping an eye on the types of foods that you're eating, because plants have what we call incomplete proteins. They do not have complete proteins, as do animal products. So it's not that you can't have the plant-based proteins, you just have to make sure that you're eating the right combinations of plant-based proteins so that you're getting all the essential aminos that your body needs to be working at its best. Okay, fats. Fats are good for you. I don't want our kids eating low fat. They need fat for their neurotransmitters, for insulation, for temperature regulation, for brain function. We don't want to eliminate fat from their body, but I would like them to focus on the appropriate fats, the fats that are healthier for them. Unsaturated fats, such as the olive oils, those type of fats are good. Avocado, which have omega-3s. I love all those. Those are the oils that we find in nuts. I love having those healthy fats in their diet, and the more they can eat of those, the better. Dark chocolate has healthy fats in it. And there's a whole host of things, as well as, pomegranates, seeds. They're all types of sources of healthy fats. The ones that I want them to be aware of are things called trans fats. Trans fats are basically processed fats. Our body does not know how to process them. They don't know how to break them down, and they don't know how to get rid of them. They cause a lot of problems. So if we can look at one thing to avoid, this is the one time I'm going to say, please remove trans fats from your diet. So again, watch out for the processed foods. If you're eating whole foods, more likely you're eating the healthier fats that we're trying to get into their body. Okay. Vitamins. Where do vitamins fall in this? So your vitamins do not give you energy. Vitamins do not give you, and they don't have calories. Vitamins are basically what we call rate limiting. And I equated this with the kids. I talked to them about if you have to drive from here to Boston, I asked them how long is it going to take you? And if you have a really good car, hopefully it takes you 3 hours or less. But if you had to stop every 5 miles to pick up more gas or more whatever it is that you might need, it would take you a lot longer to get to Boston than if you could just go straight through. And that's kind of what vitamins do in our body. We have so many of them. We have fat soluble and we have water soluble. Fat soluble vitamins, they need to be absorbed with eating with fat. Whereas water soluble, you're less likely to overindulge them because we don't store them. So like vitamin C, for example, many people eat lots of vitamin C. You don't have a toxicity to them because whatever you don't use, your body gets rid of. But vitamins in and of themselves, they are what we call rate limiting. Why I have this very convoluted picture on this is because this is just one of the many pathways of your body that's talking about glycolysis, which is the anaerobic pathway that goes into the Krebs cycle and the TCA cycle. And what you'll notice is that all the pretty colored dots are where vitamins are playing a major role in expediting the rate of these pathways that your body does all day long. So if the vitamins are not there, it's not that the pathways will not happen, it's that the pathways will happen much slower. Similarly, if you were driving to Boston and having to stop every 5 miles to pick up something else. So when you don't eat the foods that have all these vitamins in them, it's not that you're not going to continue to exist, but you're going to be moving a lot slower. You're not going to be responding as quickly to recovery. It's going to take you a lot longer to replenish what you've used up in activity. So it's really important that our athletes are getting the vitamins they need so that they are performing at their best. And they always ask me, well, how am I supposed to do that? I'm like, fruits and vegetables. That's where primary amounts of your vitamins are located. This is why mom and dad are always pushing to eat fruits and vegetables, because that's where the primary amount of your vitamins are. Other than the Bs. Your Bs are going to be mostly in animal-based products. Now, will they be found in plant-based proteins? Absolutely. But again, we want to make sure that we're eating a variety of plant-based proteins so that we're getting the complete proteins to get in all our B vitamins. So it's really about teaching the kids. The reason we prioritize the plants, the vegetables, the fruits, is because we need to keep them from being deficient in all these rate limiting steps. If they're eating the carbohydrates that are the cookies, the bread, the pasta, the rice, they're not getting the vitamins that are in the carbohydrates that are fruits and vegetables. They're still getting carbohydrates, but they're not getting the added bonus of getting the vitamins with them. So, electrolytes. Everybody wants to talk about electrolytes, electrolyte drinks. You need electrolytes. These are your primary electrolytes. They're involved in your muscle contractions. So everybody always knows about, well, if you're cramping, you have to have an electrolyte drink. That's because muscles rely on the sodium potassium pump to contract and relax. You also have magnesium, calcium, and chloride. These are all going to be in some form of electrolyte drinks that you've had in, but you also get electrolytes in many other places. You'll get electrolytes, like for example, you get magnesium in different nuts and beans. You'll get calcium in dairy. You'll get sodium in other forms of food. So it's not that you're not getting your electrolytes in other foods, you are. Electrolyte drinks are a great way to, again, add in those electrolytes they may or may not be getting in their diet. So when we say electrolytes, when we're looking at the drinks, it could be a liquid IV, it could be an LMNT, it could be a vitamin water that has added. I like to get a 2-for-1 when I do electrolyte drinks. I don't like the sugar-free electrolyte drinks because, again, the electrolytes as well as the vitamins do not provide energy. They're just going to help keep things moving. But if you're looking to get the extra boost of energy, we want something with the sugar in it. We want something with the glucose in it. Okay, so leads me right into this one. So as you can see, here's some examples. I actually happen to be a triathlete and I use Scratch Labs. Some people use Rise, LMNT's become very popular. Whatever works for your athlete is fine with me, but you have to understand that every athlete is different. Some athletes can't tolerate a high carbohydrate concentration or a high electrolyte concentration that upsets their stomach. So what I like about some of the powders is that you can dilute them. And if the kids are drinking it and maybe not having as concentrated a form of it, they're able to tolerate it without having so much GI distress. Okay, this is the difference between energy drink and energy drink. You have to understand that you have to look at the label of drinks that they're drinking. Gatorade is going to have sugar and electrolytes, as opposed to energy drinks that are like Celsius or Red Bull or C4. These have very different things in them, and the primary focus of all these things is caffeine. Caffeine is a performance enhancer. I am not going to knock this. It is a performance enhancer. Why do we not ban this? Well, we don't ban caffeine because it is profuse in our culture. There's no way we could ban this from them eating these things because it's literally in everything. Every kid's going to Starbucks, having a coffee. Some of them are having these 5-hour energies. The problem with all these things is the amount of caffeine. And what you can see by this is look at the amount of caffeine is just in a venti Starbucks brewed coffee. 400 milligrams. That is a tremendous amount. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll see that some of these are as high as 300 milligrams in what we call pre-workout, which some of the kids are using when they're working out. And you have to really be careful because if you think about it, a cup of coffee is usually about 150 milligrams. So a lot of these energy drinks have more than almost double what a normal cup of coffee would have. In addition, they also have things that are touted by research to possibly have a beneficial effect to performance, but I do not recommend any of the kids that are in the adolescent years drinking any of these things to enhance performance. So when they say they're having an energy drink, are they talking about energy in the form of carbohydrates? Or are we talking about things like this, like 5-hour energy or Prime or Monster or Celsius, which have a lot other things that are performance enhancing, but not the kind of things that I would recommend for our adolescent youth to be drinking, especially on a regular basis. So how should I feed my athlete? That's what I'm here to talk to the parents about, because you have to think about, are they going to be eating home or away? Do they need to bring the food with them? Is the food that they're bringing with them, can it be perishable? Do they need to have an insulated lunch bag? If not, what are going to be my choices? And you have to prepare for them and how you should package it. And you have to know what kind of foods that they're going to have. So again, when we think about what we just talked about in terms of we're looking at carbohydrates, we're trying not to eat too much protein, but we don't want to be running out of energy. Let's talk. If they're home, I don't really like to count calories. That's not how I work with athletes. I work with them about looking at their plate, giving them an idea of what their plate should look like in terms of portions. What you'll notice, my plate is the FDA's graph of what your plate should look like. And you'll notice that about 50 to 60% of your plate should be covered in fruits and vegetables. The guideline that I like to use for the kids that I work with is I want them to try to eat at least 3 vegetables a day. If not, I'd like to actually more like 5, but I start with something manageable. And I'd like them to have 3 fruits per day. Their protein should not constitute more than 30% of their plate. I want them to eat whole grains. So I have no problem with them eating wild rice. I don't have a problem with quinoa. I don't have a problem with any of the mashed potatoes, pasta. I'm not against grains. I just don't want the majority of their carbohydrates to be all grain. I want there to be a 50% of their plate being fruits and vegetables because, as I said, and I'm hammering this in, that's where our vitamins are that we need for our athletes. How are we doing? We're doing good. Okay, so what do we eat, when to eat? Like I said, if we have 3 hours before our event, let's say that their game starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. If they're eating at 8 o'clock in the morning, then that does not give me a lot of time to digest. But if they are, let's say their game is at 11 o'clock and they get up to have breakfast and they're eating at like 8, I could give them a full breakfast 3 hours before. I could give them their eggs. I could give them their bacon. I could give them their protein pancakes. I have no problem with them having protein because they will have plenty of time to digest it. Same thing goes for fats. Carbohydrates, like I said, takes an hour to digest. The simpler ones can take as much as 15 minutes. So depending on what time our match is or their game is, I just have to back myself up. How much time do I have before they have to play? So, gotta look at the clock. If it's 2 to 3 hours before, I'll have some protein with my carbs. So for example, I might have some oatmeal with some nuts. I might have a protein smoothie. I can have whey protein with some berries in it, with some yogurt. That would be great. I'll pre-hydrate because I want the kids to drink as much before their match. I don't want them to show up for their games being, could you mute yourself? Thank you. What I want them to do is I want them to have as much fluid in their system before they get on the field because I don't want them to show up to the game dehydrated. If we start dehydrated, we're just going to be behind the 8 ball. If they're 1 hour before, once I've eaten my major meal 2 to 3 hours before, I can have a little bit extra carbs just to top them off to give them a little extra energy. It could be in the form of a fruit. It could be an apple, a banana. It could be a rice cake with Nutella. It could be one of your smoothies, or if it's in the morning, it could be pancakes. And then 15 minutes before, I'll let them have, some of the kids like the energy gels. They might like the goos. I'm not a big fan of the goos, but some kids like them. Or maybe they want to have like a sports drink. That's fine too. But 15 minutes before, we want to keep it as simple as possible. We really don't want them to have things with fiber in it. So I wouldn't necessarily go with the banana 15 minutes before because fruit has a lot of fiber in it. You know, all those little threads that are along the side of the banana, that's fiber. So that's going to slow down digestion. So I might let them have an orange slice, but maybe I'll suck on the orange slice. I won't eat it. I'll just try and get the juice out of it. So I get all that good sugar out of that fruit. During competition, we really don't want them eating anything other than carbohydrate. And we would prefer it to be in some liquid or easy to absorb form. It could be, like I said, the squeezies, the chews, the goos, honey stingers. I love the little package of honey stingers that you just break apart and they melt in your mouth. But we really want to avoid eating any kind of protein or fat during competition because we're not going to use those for fuel and they're just going to make our stomach upset. I have a saying that I teach the kids: do not change your hairstyle the day of the wedding. We do not try new things the day of competition. We don't want to see if our stomach is upset the day of our race. We'd rather try new things maybe during practice. That's what practice is for. It's for practicing what we're going to do. And we want to try to avoid gastrointestinal distress. Watch out for things that are too concentrated because those tend to be a little bit harder for the body to deal with. So trying to keep it diluted is usually a better bet. Keep in mind, weather's a factor. We're starting to get into more of the cooler months, which is great. Kids are less likely to be overheated, but keep in mind, just like they become more stressed and they lose a lot of electrolytes in heat, when they have to be focusing on staying warm, they lose a lot of energy as well. So we want to be trying to compensate with what we're feeding them with what they're losing depending on the weather. Okay, this is where protein is really important. Recovery is really, really crucial for our athletes being able to train more frequently and to be able to come back bigger and better the next day. When we are trying to recover, we want to make sure that when the kids finish working out, we want to tell our muscles to stop breaking down. Believe it or not, some people may not know this, but when you're working out, you're not building, you're breaking down. You're trying to elicit a response of your body to say, wow, that was really hard. I'm going to make myself stronger. So the next time you do that, I'm prepared. So while you're exercising, you're breaking down. But once you stop exercising, you want your muscles to know it's time to stop breaking down. It's time to switch to rebuild mode. You do that with food. And the research shows that if you eat something within 30 minutes of stopping exercise, you actually will preserve more muscles. So I want to be able to preserve as much muscle as I can, and I want to be able to do it in the right way. So I want to combine a carbohydrate with a protein. So we don't want to just eat protein alone. Research has shown that when they looked at compared just protein or just carbs and eating a combination of protein and carb, the best replenishment happened with a combination of a carbohydrate with a protein. So we're going to play a little game here. If you look at chocolate milk, that is probably the most popular recovery thing. And that's because chocolate is the carbohydrate and milk is actually protein. I could do a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because peanut butter is the protein, jelly and bread are the carbohydrate. Might be a turkey sandwich. Turkey is the protein, the bread is your carbohydrate. Believe it or not, pizza even counts because the cheese on the pizza is the protein, the bread is the carbohydrate. And you can do this with a whole host of things. And I actually gave your AD a grab and go of 25 different variations of all this because I try to come up with new and innovative things for the kids, and your athletic trainer has posted it in her office. So the kids have lots of examples of what they can pick for in terms of recovery. What I do recommend is that they have it in their bag. Don't wait until they get home because it's been way more than half an hour by the time they get home. Leave going home for when they have their actual dinner. This is just to stop them from muscles breaking down and preserve so that they feel good the day after. So the next day they don't feel so broken down and beat up. Okay, so here we go. I'm about to pass the torch, but I'm going to introduce you to what this means. It means you as the parent have a lot of homework to do because you have to help your athlete as well as educate them. You have to teach them what to eat as well as what not to eat and explain to them what that is and what you have available to them. It also means giving them the tools, such as they may need a thermos that they have to bring with them to bring the hydration that they're bringing with them. Or it may mean that they're going to have to bring an insulated lunch bag because the thing that they want to have is something that may be perishable. Or maybe they have to get a hydro flask so that they can keep track of how much they're drinking during the day. But we want to encourage them by not putting more roadblocks in their way. We want to give them the tools that they will need and prepping them so that they are getting the foods that we're teaching them that they have to focus and prioritize. So Jen and I just finished working with one of your teams. We were able to help them, provide them with a tournament. Travel is very, very challenging for the parents. And I think it helps with engaging the kids with what they like and don't like and giving them choices, and then being able to package what they're going to bring with them so that they have what they need when they need it in the timing that we just talked about. But you're going to have to do a little shopping. So I'm going to pass the torch to Jen. She's going to talk to you a little bit about what she was able to do. Jen has been working with me and helping to create recipes and match my nutrition information with the foods that the kids like and what the parents can make that isn't too challenging or intimidating. So I'm going to pass it on to Jen.
For those of you who joined late, I'm Jennifer Ungvari. I've had kids in the Bronxville School for the last 21 years. My youngest daughter is a senior, and she is on the girls' varsity soccer team. So I recently worked with Cheryl to put together meals and snacks for an away tournament that we attend every year as a team. This was for the girls' varsity soccer program. I have a background in public relations and recipe development. And again, for those of you who joined late, Cheryl and I have known each other for 30 years as friends. And several years ago, we started working together. And I engaged her longer ago than that because I had the need for my own daughters to have better nutrition choices in daily life and in sports. But anyhow, getting to work with the girls' varsity soccer team was a pleasure. It was a lot of work, but it was worth every minute. Cheryl and I like to give choices and customize menus for each player so that they're happy with the things that they have to fuel up with, that they are things that they actually like and would choose. Many times, if you're on a road trip or at a game destination, there aren't always great choices when you get there. You can do a little research ahead if you have to get something at your destination. But what we did for this away tournament for the soccer team was we pre-packaged some breakfast and snack items I purchased at the grocery store. For lunch, we gave them some healthy choices from Park Place Bagels. And for our bus ride home the following day, we did a little survey and got some things from Panera. Separately, we created a survey prior to the tournament. We asked the girls to fill it out so we could create these customized paper bags filled with the snack items that they liked and would eat. They received a breakfast carb in the form of fruit plus a protein such as yogurt or peanut butter. We offered some bottled smoothies, yogurt smoothies, and also those were prepackaged items, and also some post-game snacks like granola bars, carrots, hummus, almond butter packets, chocolate milk, and so on. Cheryl and I will work with high school teams, club teams, individuals, anybody who wants to have some better fuel to make them a better athlete. For a high school team, this might be if your team travels to states or nationals, if you want healthy foods for the bus on site, at a meet, at a game, or it could just be a regular away game that's an important game and you want to be sure that the kids on the bus have something that's going to fuel them really well for the game because they're going right after school. For the most part, it's been very rewarding. It's been great to hear the girls' feedback just from the varsity soccer team. They repeat things back to me that they learned in the presentation that Cheryl gave them during preseason. They really appreciated all of the healthy food choices for the tournament. And this past weekend, we did a pancake breakfast. And we had fruit, yogurt, turkey sausage, and Kodiak pancake mix, which is high protein. And they appreciated it so much. They were really happy that they were going to be fueled in a healthy way for their game. So if you're looking for help with your child's team within your own family, whether that's a club team or a high school team, you feel free to contact us. There's information at the end of the presentation.
So I just wanted to show you, I was trying to flip through, what you'll notice is that like for the away stuff, we had to do some shopping. What we try and do is ask the kids what they like. Some kids may like different types of fruits, and that's kind of what's nice about using like a survey if you're doing travel stuff. And then based on what the kids are liking, we're able to tailor it to each of the kids' needs. And that's kind of what the grocery shopping and also the pre-packaging. But you have to do a little planning, and that's kind of what can be a little bit daunting. But if you're organized in how you're approaching it in terms of looking at what types of food that they need, we can help you to, explain to you how do you make that happen and how do you time it. It doesn't really take, you're not bringing suitcases of food, but it will allow you to not feel like you're having to like clean out your cabinet and bring everything. You'll have a plan of what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it, and the kids will understand at what time they should be focusing on different types of food. But I think that this lecture should at least give you an idea of what, in terms of timing, what you should eat, and what are the things that we want to try to not eat so much before, but plan on eating after. So what I want to try and do is open it up to questions. What you can do, I will stop sharing. There we go. So what we can do is I guess what we can do, Anthony, do we want to do like in the chat, or would people like to kind of raise their hand? We can unmute them. I'm happy to let people.
Yeah, either one. The chat may be easier to manage with, the amount of
Sure.
participants. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know this seems a little bit daunting, but I really do believe that dealing with helping them with food helps. Okay, can you show your email address again? Sure. Let's see if we
I
can.
think you guys have that last page of the presentation.
I didn't. Oh.
I can also send it out too, if that's easier. Like
Yeah.
I'll send out the recording to everybody, and I can, do a summary with the email addresses if
I can
that's more
also
helpful.
type it. Here, I can type it in the group
Go to
chat.
that last, can you go
Here
to
we
the
go.
last page of the
I
presentation?
could.
People can take
Yes,
a
I can do
photo.
that. Hold on, I'll reshare. Hold on. Share back. There we go. Come back. Did I come back? Did I exit out? Hold on. Don't mind me. Oh, no, sorry. Let me see if I can get back on. Ah, here we go. Okay. Like, where'd it go? All right, so here we go. So if we look at here's an example of the pre, during, and post competition that I gave as far as 3 hours prior, like a sandwich such as chicken, salad, avocado. Like 1 hour prior, you could do the smoothie. 15 minutes prior, pretzels, crackers, goldfish, energy gels, goo. During was the hydration. And then after, it could be, like I said, peanut butter and jelly, chocolate milk, or you can even have a bar. Let me, just while I hit on the bars, if your kid's using bars, I have no problem with bars, Kind bars, Adwada bars, Nature bars, but you have to look at the label. If you turn the label over, I'm looking for a bar that's going to give them carbohydrates like energy, and I also want to help with protein, excuse me, for recovery. I want to look at the label and see that there's 3 times the amount of carbohydrates in the bar to protein. If the bar says that I have 15 grams of protein and only 20 grams of carbohydrates, that is too much protein, not enough carbs. We want to try to put the emphasis on the carbohydrate, less on the protein. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Here's the email. So if you need to reach out to us, this is our email, jcsportsnutritionbxv@gmail.com. You can also reach out to either me or to Jen if you have any other questions directly. You can contact us on our cell phones. We're happy to help you out with any questions that you might have. I hope I covered information and didn't throw too much at you guys. This is also being recorded, so this will all be distributed. I will also make sure that if you do need us, I'll reach out to your AD and to Anthony. He'll have our business cards if you need that. But I'm always here for questions. If you have just a question, please feel free to reach out and just ask. I answer questions. I answer text messages all the time. Okay, so we've got lots more questions here. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see if we can scroll up to here. I get my son to eat. Yes. Okay. So there's no way I can get my son to eat anything at all before running for a 6:30 a.m. bus. You can. So what I do for my children, a couple things I do. I actually make a smoothie the night before. I will put in all the berries. I'll put whey protein. I'll put in yogurt, and I will throw it in the blender and I'll stick it in the refrigerator. That way, when he gets up in the morning, he presses blend on it to reblend it. He throws it in one of his hydro flasks and takes it with him on the bus. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if they eat something, it's better than them eating nothing. They have to get their metabolism started earlier. So if they skip breakfast, they're setting themselves up to slow down their metabolism. For athletes needing to bulk for their position, do you recommend creatine? Okay, so I'm going to give a caveat to this. I usually don't recommend any kind of supplement without working with an athlete or knowing background about that athlete directly. I will tell you that is creatine beneficial? Yes, it is. But you have to be really careful how much you're having. You should not be having more than 5 milligrams. I also need to know the age of the child. So that would have to be with a lot of caveats before I'll give the green light. I won't give it across the board. Really helpful. Good. Yep. Should they be taking multivitamin? I always believe in taking a multivitamin. Do I think that multivitamins will substitute for poor nutrition? No. But do I think that it will help get them at least somewhat back on track if they are not eating as much as the vegetables and so forth that I would like them to eat? Absolutely. So if you can get them on a multivitamin, that would be a good idea. I might even go so far as getting, if it's a female, I would prefer them have a women's multivitamin because there are things that the girls should have specifically that involve protecting their ovaries and reproductive organs. For long distance runners, is there any sign to carbo loading that? Carbo loading is the thing. I actually, with a lot of the athletes that I work with, and all the athletes, I always, especially the night before, I will have them have a regular dinner that again, we're not trying to overload them, but I will have them have an extra carbohydrate before they go to bed to top off those carbohydrate stores, because I want them to go to bed with as much carbohydrates as they can, because we don't store a lot of them. Like I said, we store a lot more fat in our body, but we really only store about 1,500 calories of carbohydrates in our liver and muscle. So we're always kind of short on our carbohydrates. So I won't necessarily have them load up. I won't do a whole pasta load thing because that can make you very bloated and slow. So, but I will have them have an little extra carbohydrate before they go to bed, before a competition, so that they are ready to go.
You have a question up there about gaining
Oh, I
healthy
missed
weight.
one. Okay. A lot of high school boys are trying to gain weight. Do you have tips for gaining weight in a healthy way? So I'm all about performance. So I'm gonna give you I'm gonna pivot a little bit. When I look at a scale, I don't care what the number is. The number is just a number. It doesn't tell me anything about how much muscle they have, how much fat they have. I need to know more information than just a number on a scale, because I can have a 150-pound bodybuilder, and I can have a 150-pound girl who sits on the couch, and they're completely made differently. So I really want to look at gaining muscle if it's for performance and trying to enhance that. I don't necessarily look at the scale. So when it says gaining weight, if I'm looking at gaining muscle, I'm going to be focusing on, are they getting enough protein in their diet? Are they eating enough meals? A lot of my boys are notorious for skipping breakfast, not starting eating until 11 or 12 o'clock, and then they can't understand why they can't eat enough to put on the muscle they want. So the sooner that they start eating and they're prioritizing making sure that protein is in each of their meals and it's throughout the day, not just 3 times a day, but more like 5 to 6, they will have a better chance of being able to put on the muscle that they want, rather than trying to just hoard food and inhale as much as they can. So that's kind of my very short, brief version of, I don't use the scale as my marker. I try to look at what is it made of. What else do we have? I think we've got, oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, I think we've covered everything. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Jen or myself, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have and follow up with any advice you might need to have your athlete have a great performance in their events.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.